Hey friends, welcome to the Daring Grace podcast. My name is Brittany Bethel. I'm the executive director of Cross Connection, and I get the distinct honor of hanging out with two really good friends and partners in ministry, Makena and Justis today. This is a real treat, so super excited. Today, we're talking about what just the work that Jesus did in the margins and how that's led the three of us to do the same kind of work, follow in Jesus' footsteps, to learn from, to fail together, to succeed together, to celebrate together, to ask hard questions together. This is a group of people that that I've had all of those conversations with and had lots of great questions with. So I'm excited to be able to talk to you. So thanks, Makena and Justis, for giving us time today and lending your expertise and your knowledge to all this. So welcome. So grateful. Makena, will you introduce yourself and just explain what you do, what you've done, what you do, how'd you get here? And I know people, but it's always good to do it again, you know? So tell us about Makena.
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Makena Bellamy. My official title is Director of Community Engagement at the Parkview Community Center. How I got here is just so unexpected. It's nothing but the work of God, honestly. The Parkview Community Center was started by, a little old lady, Gwendolyn Johnson, her late husband, Artist Johnson, where they fed the community. It started out as just like an after school thing, helping kids with homework and feeding them right in their backyard, which the city recognized, rent them a building to be able to do the same thing, where she was able to have a summer camp, after school, things like that. As I said, little old lady, she's gotten old, and
Mm-hmm.
so that was actually gifted to Cross Connection, in which I actually volunteered there for 3.5 years to be her cook, because I believed in the vision. I believed in what was going on with Parkview. And I just simply wanted to help out in whichever way I can. And I would cook and prepare. I would get off of work, meet her there, cook and prepare the meals there. Little did I know anyone was watching me at
Mm.
what I do. And because of that, doing what I was supposed to do, what it was due, I was recognized and actually selected to run the center, which I was like,
Yeah.
what is insane.
Feels like the most
It has
obvious
been an
decision.
honor. Yes, Brittany recognized me and say, hey, we want you to run it. I was like, you're sure?
Best decision I've ever made.
And I am excited about what's to come in the future at Parkview. And a little about Parkview, we feed the community. We provide a hot meal Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And on Fridays, we actually send them away with some groceries to help get them over on the weekend and to also fill in the gaps. We're not there on Tuesday and Thursdays for now, which I know that will change soon. And so that's a little bit what Parkview does, and I am excited about it.
Yeah, that's cool. I think other things that you do that we'll definitely get into is everybody by name, their story, and you know their gifts. And I think that to me has been what I actually like just literally walked out of another room at a conference that I was talking about this work, right? Like it's knowing people and knowing their stories and their names and being intentional about that. And yeah, we can, I mean, there's a lot of places that can serve a meal, but I
Yeah,
think where it takes it to like how Jesus did it is serving a meal, sitting down and like knowing people. And you do that really beautifully. So
exactly. Well,
honored to work with you.
I
You have a
love doing that.
gift.
I didn't know I could share that part. So yeah, so you all know, I try to make
Yeah,
an
you can say
effort.
whatever you want. Yeah, yeah.
I try to make an effort to
Yes.
learn. Now,
No.
mind you, we've grown significantly. We started out literally only served about 30 to 50, if we're lucky, to now on each given day serving from 150 to 200 people. And so, do I know all 200 right now? No. But the ones who
Nah, but you
come
know how they're connected.
consistently, yeah, the ones who come consistently, I make an effort to know them, not even just know their name, have a conversation with them. What makes you
Yeah.
come to Parkview? Not even just that. Hey, how's your day? Are you okay? And just to know the personal things about them, for them to trust me enough, first of all, to
Yeah.
share
Yeah.
important things about their lives, and we celebrate it together. Just for example, I had one of the participants who has been homeless for the last 9 months. And I keep telling this story. I'm going to always tell it. And he
You
shared
tell it
that
all
with
the
me.
time.
And he'd come in so humble every time. You think because he's homeless, he'd be, aggravated with everybody else around him. He has the most humble spirit. And he'd even come in sometime and he can sense the frustration in the air. For the ones who is frustrated, he would say, hey, it's okay. Life is great. And, you know, for him to share that, and he would say, you know, sometimes he would get discouraged. And I would say, hey, friend, it's not one more day further into the situation, is one day closer to getting out of the
That's
situation.
true. That's true.
Perspective is everything. How are you looking at it? And I had the honor 2 weeks ago for him to come into that building and say to me, I'm moving my place on Monday. Oh, we rejoiced, we shouted. It was just
Yeah.
such a great thing for me to be a
Yeah,
part
man.
of that, to be through that whole situation with him. And then just this past Friday, he pulled me to the side and we hugged, and he showed me the video footage of his home. And we
Yeah.
cried together again. So that's just one example of the honor and the privilege I have to do this with the Parkview Community Center and to be a part of it. It is life-changing. It is truly God's work.
Yeah.
I know that God truly had put me in this place at this set time. Never saw my life going this way. But, you know, I
Yes.
kept doing the things that God said to do, and look what happens. Testimonies.
Mm. That's good. Yeah. It's good. We're gonna get into that one. But yeah, that's good. That's what this is. And Justice, you have had such an impact. I've talked to you about this before on this podcast, actually, but I'm excited to hear more about what you're doing now. And but you had such an impact on us becoming who we are today. And so grateful to see you always and learn from you. So would love to hear from you and give everybody an update about what you're doing with your life.
Yeah.
And yeah, your connection to this thing that we do together. Yeah.
I'm Justis Mitchell, Reverend Justis Mitchell. That's still new, a new title that I'm still kind of getting to tout around a little bit, that I'm really proud of. Was connected to the Cross Connection community. Yeah, I served on summer staff for 4 years from 2018 to 2021. And then came back again in 2023, I think, was when I came back as an admin, something like that, for a summer admin position. And so, yeah, been a longtime friend of Cross Connection, and have been really just honored and blessed to, continue to be a part of this community in the ways that it continues to form me, even as I've kind of moved on to do things, and still connected, and still kind of, keep getting pulled into this really beautiful community and space. So I just graduated this past summer from the Divinity and Social Work dual degree program through Duke and UNC. Got ordained as a provisional deacon in the United Methodist Church in the North Carolina Conference, and currently I'm kind of living into what I'm calling my multi-hyphenate era, where I work as a therapist part-time, also work as a pastor part-time at Duke Memorial United Methodist Church in Durham, North Carolina, doing being the minister of adult spiritual formation, and continuing to live into what it means to be pastor, therapist, activist, organizer, all of the things, and trying to be as a deacon in the United Methodist Church, we're called to be that bridge between the Sunday morning church and the congregation and the community around us, and being kind of one foot in the church and one foot in the world, and trying to do that work as much as possible and continue to be as active in that work as much as possible. And it's the work that God is calling me into, and it's something that's really exciting. And it's been a really busy past, I guess, 6 months since I graduated, of living into all what it means to do these things instead of just studying about them for 4 years, and actually getting to do it for the first time. And so I've been really excited about it. And it's been
so good. I can't wait to learn from you today. So we're talking about collectively, and just, I want us to all three have a conversation. Justice and Makena, y'all haven't met in real life, right?
No.
Okay, cool. Y'all would be best friends. But I think, like, just collectively having this conversation of, like, what does it look like for us to live in the example of Jesus, and how he actively served people that maybe were underrepresented, or that people were just literally overlooking, or people, I mean, he did a lot of work with women, and that in his culture was just like completely not what he was supposed to be doing. He did a lot of work with tax collectors and folks that were maybe socioeconomically not in the margins, but as far as like respect from the world, maybe rightfully so, not really being paid attention to. He listened to people. He hung out with prostitutes. he fed people all the time. I think that's maybe my favorite thing that he did. And so, yeah, how does that in your context? What have you learned, not just through Cross Connection, but like in your day to day? How are you trying to live this out, and maybe what are some missteps you took along the way that you've learned from?
Yeah, that's a good one. And I can say, as far as Parkview, I can just say that, the goal every day is to walk the walk how Jesus walked it. And I get to see it every day at Parkview. Like you say, the marginalized, the ones who you least expect to be able to have a conversation with, sit down and have a meal with, those who are
Yeah.
drug addicts, those who may have done some things in their life that they're not too pleased about. But today's a new day. And so that helped me because in the beginning, I had this mindset of, judge, judge, judge. And so the transition and the day to day helped me understand no, we are all equal. No
Mhm.
one, expanding my walk with Christ, and doing this has helped me to become a better person for myself and also a better leader for the center and a better friend, better mom, a better everything, walking off of what God intends me to do. And so the people I interact with every day help me to be a better me. It helps me look at those things like, well, now you were wrong on how you've been handling that in the past, but let's work on being better at that. And that's the best part for me is they think I'm helping them.
Mhm.
They're helping me. So that's the best part about it. And as long as I continue to also make sure that I'm also staying in the word, communicating with God and keeping that mindset of whatever it is, Lord, that you want to be done or what you see fit and is being done, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. Justice, how does this play out for you?
Yeah, I think there's two kind of main ways that I see it a lot. But first of all, I think kind of the overlapping thing between the both of them is I say all the time that the work that I do is story driven and story centered. As a therapist, I work with a lot of a modality called narrative therapy, and basically, it's just a fancy word to say I work with the stories that form us, the stories that have foundationally formed us to who we are. One of my specialties, whenever I'm in the therapy space, is I work a lot with like religious trauma and spiritual abuse. So people whose relationship with religion is very storied, and they've had a lot of these folks have had stories that have been placed on them because of certain aspects of their identities or certain experiences they've had throughout their life. They've had these narratives placed on them, and they step into this space having expectations and labels and judgment placed upon them to the point where they don't even really feel like they have a sense of their own agency and control of the stories that of their own life. And a part of my work as a therapist in the therapy space is for us to tell the stories, and allow them to have the agency to reclaim their story, to get to say, well, this is what I believe about God, even though I'm told I can't believe in God because of this part of who I am. I'm told I can't participate in Christianity because of the way that I love people and the way that I exist within the world around us. And being able to say, so I've been told I can't do that, but in reality, this is how I do it. And being able to tell those stories and regain that sense of agency is really beautiful. And it's a part of this work that I think the church often has not stepped into. And I've been really gracious to be able to be some of that voice that is encouraging the church and empowering churches around me to be able to step into that work, to say the church has gotten it wrong a lot of times. But say we want to be able to do it right. In order to do it right, we've got to make sure that we're providing the counter narratives to maybe that dominant narrative that so often is the leading voice that is doing often a lot more harm than good in some ways. When
Yeah.
we think about broader vision of Christianity at times. And I think in the church that I go to, in the church that I'm working at now, I've been really blessed and honored. It's a church I've been at for about 5 years now, and this church is doing a lot of really intentional work to, yeah, to recognize the stories that exist within our community. And we've become a church that is continuing to grow in the amount of LGBTQ people that sit in our pews on Sunday mornings. And we've been really blessed and honored to be able to be a space where people are starting to feel safe to come to this church and sit with us, and not just sit with us, but to like participate with us
Yeah.
and to become members, to serve as our church council chairs, to be our staff parish relations committee chair, and to really participate in ministry, because we're creating a space where we recognize that their stories are just as much as a part of the communal story as everybody else's. And that's not just that's something that affects all of us as a community together in this space. We've gotten it wrong, and it's a messy work, and we're continuing to get it wrong when we recognize we're continuing to bump up against the things that we didn't even realize that were there. I say all the time, in the therapy space, my job is to allow my client or the person I'm doing therapy with to grab my hand and lead me through this kind of the rooms of their mind. And so we're opening doors, we're walking into rooms, they're telling me what's in the room. And sometimes we walk into a room and we forget just how much space there is between the door and the couch, and we bump into it. And when we bump into it, we're recognizing, okay, well, that couch is as closer than we thought it was. So let's talk about why it's there. And we're getting to bump into things. And when we bump into things, getting to really process, okay, we bumped into that. Why is it here? And that's what so much of this work is recognizing that we're going to bump into stuff, and it's going to cause an inconvenience when we bump into something or trip over something, but it's how we react to when we bump into stuff or trip over stuff that really matters.
Absolutely.
Also, there's a story behind the thing that we've bumped into, and we need to really kind of sit with that story a little bit more to really understand why it's there.
Yeah, I like that language, Justice, of centering the story. And Makena, I think that's what you're doing too, is allowing these folks that are like having, coming to get a meal, that they have a full story, that the narrative is not, oh, you are someone that is in need of a meal. The narrative is you are a full grown adult person or child that has a full story outside of the time that you're here at Parkview.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like you sharing the story of the man who got housing, that there's so much more to that story, right? Like, and you've been able to listen to it and celebrate. Justice, I like that framing. That's really cool. And I like that idea too of like, yeah, we're gonna trip over stuff and bump into stuff, and it's gonna be really hard, and we have to process it together, and not just move it out of the way. I think you both are doing that work of. I think it's easier in the church, not in therapy, because I think therapy, the point of it is to figure out why things are in the way. But in the church and in like communities, service spaces, I think a lot of times we're just trying to get stuff out of people's way instead of processing why the stuff is in the way, right? Exactly. And I think there's good work there. Can you, either one of you, talk about like, not the challenge, I think we can all guess challenges of this work, right? I don't think they're secrets, right? But like, what have you learned when you've bumped into stuff, to use Justice's metaphor? Like when you've bumped into stuff and like you've hung with it and like really walked through it, what have you learned in that process? Does the question make sense?
Yeah, for me, in our communities is not emphasized. And unfortunately, we don't have access to things like resources for education or resources that teach us how to be financially literate, teach us how to be homeowners, and so it's always that misconception of, oh, they just don't want to, or they don't have a desire to. No, we just don't know how. You think the way that you learn things, or that's how people are in this world, because you are privy to certain things, or you have access to certain things that everyone does. And that's not the case. And so the people that I encounter every day, it's just like, oh, I can be an accountant. You can. Why can't you? Let's get you in the right, you like numbers? Let's get you in the right direction so we can further your education to get what you need so you can have the credentials to get this job. So that's why communication is important, because it helps not only us, it helps others to understand, well, I am somebody. I am important, because you wouldn't even understand how a lot of people honestly think that they have no gift, no talent. They're unimportant. They don't count. And that light that you see that goes off in an individual, well, they realize, wow, I really can. And then especially when it's a child, that there, man, I tell you, and we go with it. It's just like, when you can see the people in the community are just like, man, I want to thank you. I don't even realize I've done anything to anybody. Just talking, so I have a conversation, it just brings out the best in individuals. They want to be better. They want to. And that's what the world fails to understand. If you would take the time to understand and get to know people outside of your norm, you would realize that is not a skill thing. It's just the access to what's needed to get to where you are.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's kind of what I said earlier. This like not this kind of dominant narrative and the narratives that kind of are imposed upon us and imposed upon so many of us in our communities. And I say all the time that the theological work that I strive to do the most is so often there's kind of we all exist within, I like to call it the instant pot of life. We exist within this pressure cooker of life. And for so many of us, there's this one dominant narrative that has put a lot of pressure onto us. And a lot of the work when we're talking about doing ministry at the margins and doing ministry with those who've been marginalized, a lot of the work that we're doing is whenever you can't open an instant pot without letting out a little steam first. And what we're doing is when we provide a counter narrative, provide that narrative that says like, no, you can do that. If that's something you're passionate about, you can do that. That's us hitting the button and letting out a little steam. And we're continuing to make that really dominant and really intense narrative a little less pressured, because we're able to say like, no, like here's a way that exists that counters that narrative.
Yeah.
And so much of what we do in this kind of ministry at the margins work is being able to empower people with that ability to kind of let some pressure out and to provide a new perspective. Kind of all about perspective is what you said earlier, and just like letting some of that pressure out and really letting it feel less intense, because when all we know is one really dominant, intense narrative, of course we're going to be so intimidated that we're going to think that there's no other way that we could work around that. But whenever we can have multiple narratives, there's a little bit less pressure to be able to, and allows us to be able to do the things that we feel passionate about, enjoy doing, or the things that make our soul light up, like you said earlier.
Yeah, man, it's real. You with the parables today, Justis. I'm grateful. Come on, Pastor. But yeah, I think that there's so much there, right? Like we could dissect just this whole piece of it of just like being pressure releasers. I think is really interesting. I think Makena, you and I talk about this all the time. Like I don't understand the Black community because I'm not Black, right? Like I feel like that's obvious, but sometimes people need me to say it for some reason. It's obvious to the two of us, I guess I should say. And so and people with eyes. But I think that I think what I've learned, right, and like what I can see are microaggressions against Black folks that think you guys are angry for no reason, or like it is all like popping off and all of that, right? Like, can you speak to a little bit about like what it looks like to like get to be your full self, but also just the ability to let off steam? You talk about that like with block parties, like the beauty of that. So kind of using the steam analogy. Talk to me about that.
And that is the biggest part that even Brittany feared, coming to this community like, this white face coming in here, what am I gonna do?
It makes zero sense. It still makes zero sense.
No, but it does make sense. And this is what you have to realize as scripture is being worked, is because the misconception, I shared with you personally how prior to now, I never trust white people. Because I was always raised to don't trust the white man. He out to get you. He don't have your good intentions in mind. You know, that's the misconception. Is that in any race, any culture, there's going to be a bad person, okay? It's not just one culture, one race. There's bad people everywhere. And with you coming around and you and all of cross connection being present, it shows the community that there's no color. It's just our heart. And so when we have the block parties or the Super Bowl parties, or even when we're handing out the meals throughout the week, when they come in the building, excuse me, which is primarily African-American Black, and we can see the white folks putting plates together, bagging cookies, giving out meals, helping out, it's like, what? We can coexist? Period. You know what I mean? And so what are you doing? You're speaking a language. So every time you come around, it is just it's making the gap between our cultures a little bit smaller, because it's showing that don't just look at race. Look at a man's heart and make a decision on how you're going to respond. Not to say based off of heart, cut them off, because that's the no, but on how to respond to that individual, and also understanding cultural differences will help us deal with anger, aggression, and things like that. Because like you said, there's always a story to why a person responds the way they do. It's not just that situation at hand. There's some history behind it. So when we get to know each other and how our cultures are different, you'll understand, well, that's why that person got so mad when I said this word. To me, I didn't say anything wrong, but to them, this is what it means. You know what I mean? So that's why conversation is good. Talking and having relationships, it help us to understand. And so that's how I train individuals who come in a building, you know,
Mhm.
without looking at their situation, open your eyes, just conversate. I don't care if they come in there pissy drunk. Can I say that in this podcast?
Yes, you can say whatever you want.
If
We're
they
in
come
charge here.
in pissy drunk, just plug your nose. If they stink, plug your nose. But we're going to still talk to them and
Yes,
treat them as human beings. You know what I mean?
yes.
We're going to get their story. Why are they pissy drunk? Maybe it's
Mhm.
something in their life that they just don't know how to cope with, and they go to alcohol for the resolution. But if we can learn those things and then help them to get to the right direction, then alcohol becomes the past.
It's real. That's good. I love that. I love that. That's good. So I think like we understand obviously that this is important work and it's been important to all three of us in a way that it shaped our career, it shaped how we move through the world. Um, I think it's also shaped how we navigate conversations that people with folks that don't agree with, us in this. And so just I'm just curious, like I mean the passage of scripture that Juan forgave us to kind of like process on this Luke 4 where Jesus stands up in the synagogue and the Spirit of the Lord is upon me to, to break chains and to free the oppressed and to do all this. And I mean that he's quoting, prophets. He's trying to live out something that was said so far ahead of him, and we're trying to live out something that was said so far ahead of us. And there's going to be couches in the way, to use that metaphor. How? Why do you think people struggle with this concept so much? What are your experiences, and why do you think we haven't like figured this out yet?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question, and there's so many answers. But I think one of the things that, like, yeah, I mean, one of the things that the comes to mind whenever you ask that question is just, I think one of the things that we often forget is that our, like, another person's liberation is not their own separate thing that they are dealing with on their own. All of our liberations are bound up in each other's. And I think
Yes.
that this kind of holy solidarity of what it means to be created children of God, and that we all have a uniting factor as being created children of God, and that we are all God's people and we are all united in some ways, is something that we often, out of for a lot of people, out of convenience, forget to recognize. And I
Mm,
think a big part of that is being able to, yeah, being able to name very clearly, like, our liberation is bound up in each other's, and that the struggle for freedom for some folks is also the same struggle for freedom for different folks, even if it looks different, and that none of us are free until all of us are free. And I think the more and more that we do to remember that in our church communities and in our spaces of faithfulness, is the more and more that we'll get closer and closer to maybe getting it right,
maybe.
to
Yeah.
maybe figuring out what all this is about in the end. And it takes a lot of messy accountability. Yeah, accountability is the name of the game, I think. Um, yeah, I say often in our kind of social work spaces and the kind of theological spaces that I was formed, we often have the language of safe space or brave space, but there's an article that I read in grad school that kind of pushed it further to accountable space, and saying that,
Mm-hmm.
yes,
Say more.
we can stay safe space, but can we really guarantee safety? And the reality is we can't guarantee safety, especially in the world that we live in today. And when we say brave spaces, we in some ways discredit the kind of bravery that it takes for oppressed folks to step into spaces that aren't historically welcome for them. It kind of, yeah, discredits the bravery that it really takes to just be a person of color in the world, to be a LGBTQ person in the world, to be an oppressed person in the world. It discredits some of that work. And so a lot of that, so moving further, it's the accountability. And I mean, I think the accountability shows up in going back to the stories, is there's a lot of weight of what it means to hold stories alongside each other. And whenever I'm holding your story and you're holding my story, that's a lot of trust. And so we have to make sure that we are holding each other accountable for the ways that we are committing to sharing and holding and honoring our stories in community. And so I think, kind of what Makena's been talking about, just like being able to do the work of like stepping into spaces that maybe aren't the most comfortable, but being able to step into those spaces and say, no, like this space is going to work because we're committing when we enter this space that we're going to hold each other's stories and we're going to hold each other in community and hold each other accountable when we mess it up, because we're inevitably going to mess it up. And so being able to say like, we're not gonna stray away or stay away from the hard conversations. Like we're gonna mess it up, and so we're gonna hold each other accountable when we mess it up. It's that calling in versus calling out kind of language, and it's something that, when we're accountable with each other, it makes that kind of holy solidarity work a little bit easier because there's a trust built. And so I think that's what this work has to look like.
Yeah, I like that. I like the accountability space. That's interesting. I'm gonna be about that one for a minute.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, I'll send you the article that I
read. Because we talk about it, right? Like we say curious space at Cross Connection now, because safe is not realistic. It's not real, and brave. I mean, we have friends that are meek, and so bravery sounds like something. And I think being meek might be the bravest thing we could be, but like that, there's just like a connotation to that word that is, can be helpful or hurtful. Like I love that word. That word speaks to me in such a strong way, but I know it doesn't speak to everyone that way. I like the word accountable because it means shared interest, right? I like that. That if we're accountable to each other, if we are working together in the work, then we get an opportunity to like give and take, right? And when I can't show up fully, then you can. And vice versa. I think is really cool. That's really good.
Yeah.
Good word.
There's a perception that like accountable means someone's done something wrong and we're holding them accountable. But no, accountability at its base is just a shared trust, and it's being able to hold each other to a shared trust and a shared commitment to trust.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, when we talk about like serving one another, right? Like that's the word service is hard, like to get to the right place. I think. Because that puts me in a higher position than somebody else, right? But what I love about the model Jesus gives of service is that he's always lower, right? But I think that this accountability is, I like that word better because like it's give and take for both of us, right? So Makena, early conversation, you were like, I'm learning so much from them, right? And they are getting so much from you. It's reciprocal. That's why I think like it is a reciprocal space. How in both of your situations, how are you with people that disagree with you outwardly, right? Can give some advice to the folks that are listening and to me about how you're stepping into situations that people verbally disagree with how this work, right? This like hanging out with people that some people might not think are worthy of your time or money or space or whatever. Like, what is your tactic to starting a conversation that might be productive? Yeah. So what are some thoughts you have around that?
Yeah, I think the thing that comes to mind first is, as a therapist, the biggest tool that a therapist ever has is a question. And I think that also goes for all of us. I think the biggest thing that we have is a question. It's the most powerful thing often. And so I think, we can go into conversations and tell people they're wrong as much as we want to, but often whenever we instead approach it with the language of curiosity, like you said, like when we're curious and we're asking questions of like, tell me more about that. Because it seems like something that's really sitting with you. And I'm curious, like, where does this come from? Like, where does this belief that you're coming at me with come from?
Yeah.
And often whenever we sit and we talk about it more and we continue to ask questions and dig deeper, we get to understand a little bit more of that story. And when we understand to have the bigger picture of a story, it's a little bit easier for us to relate or talk about how we don't relate to it.
Yeah.
And so there's just, I think a question goes so much further than a strongly worded email or a threatening presence will ever go. And so just curiosity is, really where it should be the foundation for all of our conversations, especially when we're entering conversations from different spaces. We always say in the therapy space that the client is the expert of their own experience. And I think that goes for anyone that we're in relationship with. As much as I tell someone that their perspective or their experience is wrong or incorrect or whatever, it's not going to do anything. And so recognizing that like they're the expert in their own experience, and if they're coming at me and saying that this is their experience, I got to honor that. And so all I can do is ask questions about their experience and learn more about it.
That's good. Makena, what's your thought there? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, the key thing, like Reverend Justin said, it's the why. The problem that we have is that the minute someone does not agree with us or says something we don't like, we immediately go into defense mode. We're just like, no, we judge or we shut them off or whatever the case may be. But when you have that conversation, let's ask why. Well, like he said, tell me more about that. Let's discuss it. And I've learned through Parkview experiences, the more I discuss or we discuss why a person feels that way or why we would come to a mutual understanding or we agree to disagree. But the thing is, we still come around. And I have that perfect example. The one that comes in, Cook. Man, me and him started literally ready to fight, But now, learning to conversate and understand differences through conversation, it was rough at first because he couldn't understand because things that happened to him in the past caused him to have that defense up constantly, to always feel like I'm going to be overlooked or I'm going to get mistreated or something's going to happen to me negative. And through conversation, this is different. Let's try a different approach. Let's give this process a chance. See how it works. And then if it's not working, let's discuss why it's not and let's figure out why it's not working. And through that, our relationship has changed. To see us be in the same room smiling and laughing together is so different. Sometimes he might get to that edge and I have to remind him, hey, we've come a long way. Not go back, So again, reminding, because sometimes we will forget. Human nature, you go to what you're familiar with, and so reminding sometimes, hey, don't go back to that familiar path. We're moving forward. So to wrap it up, the key thing in that is communication and understanding and talking and questioning. Why do you feel that way? Why do I feel this way? And let's come into a common ground,
Yeah, it's talking.
Yeah. And important also is to also recognize, like, before we engage in these types of conversations, we need to know for ourselves, where are our boundaries? Like, because we have to make sure that, for far too often, folks who are marginalized, folks who are oppressed are stepping into these conversations and being pushed way beyond our boundaries and and it's creating harm. It's continuing to perpetuate. So being able to say, like, okay, whenever this gets brought up or the conversation goes in this way, here's where a boundary of mine is, and being able to being able to be very clear with our boundaries, because if we continue to let people cross our boundaries, they're never going to know that our boundaries exist. And then they're never going to, it's going to continue to we're not holding ourselves accountable in that moment. And so it's an important part of the work of being able to be curious and enter those conversations, but also recognizing where does the conversation go? Like, we can only go so far. And being able to be very upfront and clear with those is,
And I think Jesus gives us examples of this that we don't use enough, because even in this story in Luke 4, he just walks away. Like, the people get mad about what he's saying, right? They're ready to throw him off a cliff. They're ready to, like, get rid of him. That's the intention, is like, how dare you, do this? How dare you behave this way? And he just walks away. And I think there's so much of that there. Like, I'm not sure the exact passage, so I shouldn't quote it, but this idea of, like, go into the city, and if they don't, feed you dinner, if they don't take care of you, if they don't protect you, if they don't listen to you, then dust your feet off and walk out, right? Like, there is the permission to do that in scripture, this boundary conversation of, like, even Jesus got to a point where he's like, I love you guys, I'm out, and I think knowing that for ourselves, of, like, when to bail out of a conversation is not us not standing up for each other. It's not us failing at the work. It's just knowing that, like, this is not going to be productive for me or you, right? It's, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to come on back later, but I'm going to walk away for a second and just, like, allow everything to settle, right? There's so much of that in scripture that we are not talking about enough, because we think we got to double down and we're not fighting hard enough for one another and we're not, whatever. And it's like, no. Like, if it comes to blows, right? We can try to de-escalate, but at the end of the day, if it's not going to de-escalate, we got to walk away, because it's just going to do harm to us and to the person. And I think there's such wisdom in the scripture of that, and such wisdom in the therapy world of the boundary conversation, because in any service work, whether it's church or not, I think we are wired to care for people to our detriment. And I'm speaking to the choir here, but I'm also speaking to myself, and like, I am terrible at this, right? Like, working to my detriment, right? Instead of like knowing and saying, nope, I need to let this go for a second, and yeah, trust that God cares about it more than me, which is a hard thing for me to do. Other thoughts on this that I didn't ask or that you want to share? I don't want to cut us off too quickly, but this is good. This has been so helpful for me.
Yeah. I think, last thing that kind of in that accountability and boundary conversation, I think often also, like, I think it's a very scriptural thing too, as well, of like, we don't do any of this alone. We do this in community with each other. We're not called to do, we're not supposed to do any of this alone.
Yes.
And so being able to name our boundaries is also allows us to be able to name where we need solidarity and allyship.
Yes.
And whenever we're not naming our boundaries, we're continuing to push on in a very unhealthy way on our own. And so being able to name our boundaries is also this very vulnerable work of being able to invite other people into that, of being able to say, like, this specific conversation, this specific thing is running up against a boundary of mine, and I need help. I need help to be able to continue that, because it's important to me, but I know that my boundary says I can't do this alone, or I can't do this. And so I need some solidarity, some allyship, some communal assistance to be able to help me do that. And that's accountable work. And to be able to have the trust to be able to pull people into that is important and holy and sacred. And yeah, it's all about accountability and stories and trust and community.
Yeah, I can say that, and Makena can say that, but we are not living it. so we both like to get it done ourselves, so we're good and bad for each other in that regard.
Yeah.
Makena, any other words or thoughts from you on this too?
Yeah, I think this was a great conversation. The scripture that we selected was awesome, because it just further clarifies or further confirms that we're all doing the right thing, because Jesus, he was the greatest, and he walked in that room like, you think because we're neighbors and this is where I'm from, I'm going to give you favor? Oh, how about that prostitute down there? How about that, the foreigner, and so the scripture just reminds us of that, is that let's look at those who are the ones we least expect, to help or be around. And let's continue to focus on them. And we in turn learn how things will change in our lives for the good, if we just do that simple thing. Consider those who are less fortunate, or those who are the least to be considered. And then things will change for us, mentally, physically, everything around us changes. Our thought process even changes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good. Well, it's no secret how much I care about both of you and believe in the work that you're doing, and I'm proud to know you. And just what a gift to like learn from you and to be in relationship with you over long periods of time, Justis, to watch who you've become and who you will become. There's more to come, and Makena, same, like just in the short time that we've been doing this work together, the amount of that you've changed my life and changed this ministry is undeniable. And so just so grateful for both of you and how you show up in the world every day. You didn't need Cross Connection to do that. We are just lucky enough that we get to do it together. And I'm really thankful for that. And I'm just grateful to learn from you today. So thanks for your time and for giving us so much of it and so much of your wisdom. We're just really grateful. Thank you so much for listening today. We're so grateful for Justis and Makena and the time they gave us, and to learn and to be in relationship with, to see people, to learn stories, to figure out how to do this work together. What a gift it is. And we ask that you share this episode. It helps us to be able to spread this message further, to continue the conversation in a bigger way. And then also, if you are a fan of this work, we always invite you to give to Cross Connection and to be a part of that in any way that you can. Whether it's the work at Parkview, whether it's the work at camps or retreats, or just like understanding theology together, we just invite you to be a part of that in any way you want to be, in any way that it gives you life and purpose as well. We're always looking for volunteers at Parkview, so if that's something that you live in the Charlotte area and have some time, we definitely could use that time. And so I ask that you reach out to Juan to get connected in that way, and he'll get you connected. Always we ask people to stay curious and be involved in your community and find someone to be in service to and with this week. Thank you so much for listening today.